Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. But let's get to some of these questions that people have written in. Parker says, here's a question I want to ask. It's not for me, but I'm curious about it. And I love this question, Parker. For example, a kid's special interest is Paw Patrol. And it's all over the Christmas list. And the therapist or another person says he needs a new age-appropriate interest, and there was no Paw Patrol under the tree. I heard about a similar story with Shannon. It was actually Nancy that went through that with Thomas the Tank. I would like to hear that story and how to handle a situation like that. I'm asking out of curiosity and helping other people.
Yeah. So I always talk about there's, there are lots of decisions we have to make when we're working with our kids. One decision is, do I want to give the child, in this particular instance, something of significant interest, that means a powerful reinforcer, or do I want them to have something age appropriate? And there's a good reason behind both of those. So do I want something that's a powerful reinforcer? My God, there's like a million reasons why we would want a powerful reinforcer, right? Yeah. Like most of the time in ABA, we're actually seeking out those powerful reinforcers because they're the only thing we have in order to teach a child. If you don't have a powerful reinforcer for a child, you can't teach them, period, because they will find other reinforcers, right? But when you have a powerful reinforcer like that, Paw Patrol, and you want to teach your child something difficult, it comes in very useful, very handy. Yeah. So that's one reason for that. The reason for age appropriate is when you're at the point where you want to increase social skills with other children, peers. And if you're playing with Paw Patrol, but you're not playing with something that is more age appropriate, your peers will not be attracted to engaging with you. And that is the only reason. So you can have both. You can have Paw Patrol as the powerful reinforcer, but when it comes to peer interaction, you're going to want to have some things that are more age appropriate. These things, we have to remember, the age appropriate things are not reinforcers for that particular child. They're work. They're work. And that's okay, because once he has engaged with his peers using the appropriate toys, he can have a time on his own watching Paw Patrol. And that's, it's true for a lot of us. I actually saw an old friend of mine yesterday, and it's funny because sometimes when I see friends who are my age, and we've known each other for a long, long, long time, we're very honest and transparent, and we talk about how like socializing doesn't have the same reinforcement value as it did when we were in our 20s, right? When you're in your 60s, all you really want to do is just chill and not do anything.
Right.
And so social behavior, which would be the peer appropriate play, the age appropriate play, is not a reinforcer for us anymore. In fact, you kind of force yourself to go out. It's a job.
Oh, yeah.
And after that, you can have your Paw Patrol, which is laying in bed and watching whatever it is you want to watch. So you just have to have both. They have different reasons, and you figure out which one is appropriate for that time.
I always say I want to write a book that is translating parent to BCBA and BCBA to parent, because I feel like everybody gets so black and white about things.
Oh, yeah. This is a really good point, and thanks for saying that, because I have seen a lot of, in fact, I engage with a lot of BCBAs who do this, and they are like, no, we can't let him play with this because it's not age appropriate. They forget that it doesn't matter, it's a reinforcer.
Yeah.
Things that are reinforcers don't have to be age appropriate or in any way appropriate as long as they're reinforcers. That's very important.
And on the parent side, we go and we ask the team and say, what kinds of things should I get my child? And when they say, oh yeah, I don't get the Paw Patrol, we think that means no Paw Patrol whatsoever.
Right.
Whereas I wish, I'd like to insert myself into the conversation and say, what kinds of skills would you like your child to be working on?
Exactly.
Here's the list of toys that would be good for them that are age appropriate, and we'll work with them, you know, to do that. And from the parent side, you know, that they could be saying, hey, you know, I know that the Paw Patrol thing isn't very age appropriate, but how could we take that and make it more age appropriate? Like, how could we work towards that? Like, so now there's one Paw Patrol toy that's the Paw Patrol toy, but then we have you know, a drawing pad where we're going to learn how to draw Paw Patrol.
You can take a lot of stuff like that. You're right.
Or Thomas the Tank Engine that, you know, okay, so we're going to get one Thomas the Tank toy, but now we're also going to get them a train set that's the HO that's a little bit older. Or we're going to get them a book about real trains.
Yes.
Or we're going to take them to Travel Town where they have real old trains.
Okay, so, and you bring up a whole nother point, because you pointed out when Nancy was talking about Wyatt and how some of these things that are reinforcers, I want to say two other things about things that are powerfully reinforcing. One is that they can become obsessive.
Yes.
And that's a different issue. That is not the issue we're talking about here. It's a different issue. They don't always have to become obsessive if you can control them, but they can become obsessive.
Yes.
When something becomes obsessive, now it's part of the behavioral program to get you out of that obsession, which, by the way, also doesn't happen forcefully. It happens gradually, because when we have obsessions, there's a reason for those as well. They're not just, oh, this is part of the autism. No, the reason we have things that are obsessive compulsive is because we have anxiety, and these things give us a sense of control over our environment. They are familiar. There's something about different things that gives us a sense of control. So obsessions as a whole have to be taken away gradually or reduced gradually. Otherwise, our anxiety will shoot through the roof. So that's an important thing to remember. But the other part of it, Shannon, is like, you know, everything. Like a lot of parents would ask me, you know, his biggest so like I'll start with, what are some reinforcers? That's like the most important thing. You cannot do any kind of behavioral intervention. You can't do any kind of intervention unless you know what are the rewards, right? So what are the reinforcers? And parents will have a hard time listing them. Yeah. And I'll be like, well, what about like an iPad or playing on, and they'll say, oh yeah, he loves the iPad, but we're not really allowed to give that to him. That's not the case. That is what's really important to realize. You can give any kind of reinforcer as long as it is controlled, so it's not all day long every day, and as long as it's not harmful. And the reason I say harmful is because as children, there are certain things that are harmful. For instance, sugar. As adults, there's a ton of reinforcers that we sometimes give ourselves that are harmful, such as alcohol. Alcohol is a very harmful reinforcer that a lot of people use. Such as shopping, such as gambling. These are all harmful reinforcers. And we don't want our kids to learn harmful habits. So you start with teaching them you can have any reinforcer as long as it's not harmful and it's not obsessive. It doesn't take up your whole day.
Right.
And that's it. That is the key to it. And you know, so any kind of reinforcer is fine.
And then, you know, but to Parker's point, if you've carried it out to the nth degree, which people do, because we want to listen, and we don't hear all the nuance to it. And so when people do, you know, when there is disappointment because something is not under the tree, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, and I mean, disappointment is a different issue. The way I would deal with it is I would make sure there are some things under the tree.
I agree.
That are pleasant for the child. I mean, remember the whole purpose of Christmas or whatever you're celebrating, right, is that it's a day when you are giving your child free reinforcers.
Right.
I mean, that's what this is about.
Right.
So I would make sure there are things that are interesting, because realistically, putting stuff under the tree that the child has no interest in is like, for a typically developing child, buying them stuff they don't like.
Right.
So why would you do that, you know?
No, absolutely. Don't forget, you can watch Ask Dr. Doreen live every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We hope to see you there.